episode 292 of Global from Asia. Today, we're talking about building a brand and Amazon business from inside the Chinese firewall.
Welcome to the Global from Asia podcast, where the daunting process of running an international business is broken down into straight-up, actionable advice. And now, your host, Michael Michelini.
Thank you all for choosing to download and listen to our little podcast here. Getting closer to number 300. And this has been one I've been waiting for. Cameron Walker, he's a longtime listener and supporter in the community, in many communities here in China and the Amazon space. And it's a pleasure to get him on. We are talking about his journey to build an Amazon brand inside of China, where he has some unique perspectives and he really shares quite a bit of insights. It's really, really great. It's also really thank you, Cameron, for sharing on this community podcast, as well as over the years in blog posts and coming to our cross-border summits and other events we do and other initiatives and members calls in the GFA VIP membership and everything. So it's a real pleasure to get him on the show, and he shares some really amazing insights. Just some technical difficulties. We're like struggling with the internet between my bad internet in Manila and his internet in China, and maybe there's just so many users on Zoom. They said Zoom stock was shooting up with the coronavirus and more people working online and needing these online collaboration tools. But basically, it's a fascinating conversation. I think you'll get some great insights for, building your business, finding products, the ups and the downs, some strategies for being closer to your factory and different ways of sourcing. So without further ado, let's take it away, Cameron. Do you enjoy the show and you want to get involved with even more amazing benefits and features and people here? GFA VIP, Global from Asia VIP, is an amazing members program. We've been doing more and more calls lately because these events have been getting canceled due to coronaviruses and travel bans and border issues. So we are online more than ever. I got a whole library of online courses. We have these live workshops and masterminds. Of course, the community, and we have community management. Actually, a new girl on the team, Princess, is helping out now. So if you want to talk to Princess, she'll take care of you. That's a pretty cool one. GFAVIP.com. It would be great to see you on the other side. Thank you, boy, for tuning another Global from Asia podcast. This show is developing, and I'm finally got Cameron on the show. We've known each other for quite a while. I mean, in the community and the various events, we've both progressed so much over the years. And Cameron's a full-time seller now, and you've also done amazing work with Global Sources and the trade shows, and we've seen each other. I feel like my first impression, our first time I remember we talked, was the border crossing blog post. I think if that's is that where we connected or first started chatting, or am I wrong?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think I wrote a post on your blog. So I'm awesome. First of all, it's awesome to finally be on the show. I think we've known each other for 5 years or so, and I think you're right. I think it was the blog post on crossing the border, because me and you were both kind of soldiers that crossed the border.
Yeah, we've been there.
Very often, a couple times a week. And I think we're both also one of those kind of people that likes to incrementally test.
Yeah.
So we would both have little secrets to save ourselves 30 seconds here or 30 seconds there.
Yeah, exactly. Those added up. Like, yeah, I know. I mean, it's definitely, I don't know how many times. Foursquare is deactivated now. I don't know if you had used Foursquare, but I remember I was like the king. It was like a check-in app on your, like a social app. I was the king, or I forgot. No, I think it's, man, I'm even blanking on what. They give you trophies or awards if you were the most frequent visitor of certain places. It was like a location-based app. I was often the king of, I'm saying the wrong word, but basically the number one visitor of the Huanggang border for a while, and Shenzhen Bay border back in.
Cool. And yeah, maybe that's because I wasn't using Foursquare. So.
Yeah, maybe you would have beaten me if you had used that app. But
by the way, my newest tip for everybody is take the train. I haven't been to Huanggang in a long time. I completely avoid it now and just take the high speed route.
Okay. Great. We got to update the blog, man. But that's awesome. So today there's so many things we can talk about, but I think just, I think people, listeners, I know you're also a regular listener. Thanks for always tuning in and giving feedback. I think we talk about your journey, the private label brand, becoming, developing as you've developed. And maybe before we get into it, a little bit of background about you. Actually, we're connecting on Skype. You spent time in Xi'an, right? First, or maybe your journey into China a little bit, and
I
here.
did. I did. Yeah, I spent 6 years in Xi'an. That's kind of the middle of the story. So let me give you,
Yeah,
a minute or
Let's go
two,
back to the beginning.
at the beginning. So first of all, I'm Canadian from Toronto area. I graduated university in 2002 with a business, an undergrad business degree, and I moved to Hong Kong 2 months later. So it was kind of right immediately after graduation. I got an internship at an investment management company in Hong Kong.
Okay.
It wasn't really anything special. It was kind of a little bit of a marketing position. It was through, believe it or not, the Canadian government, a subsidy program. So this company didn't have to pay me a salary. All they had to do was put me up in an apartment in Hong Kong for 6 months, and I would work for them for free. So thanks to the Canadian government, I ended up over in Hong Kong. And that was kind of the start of what's been, I guess, 17 years. So that wasn't the original plan, but it kind of developed that way. So Hong Kong for 6 months. I traveled around Asia for 3 or 4 months, backpacking after that. And then I ended up, well, I guess something to put in there that we can maybe touch on later is that was right during SARS as well.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I was right kind of right in the middle of SARS in 2003 in Hong Kong and also mainland China.
Yeah.
And after that, I moved to Beijing and started learning Chinese. That lasted about a year and a half. And then I joined Global Sources, which I guess some of your audience or the majority of your audience probably knows it's best known now for being a trade show organizer.
Yeah.
But back then it's a B2B media company. So they had magazines, they have an online catalog, and they also have trade shows. So I worked for them for 14 years, believe it or not.
Wow. Time is flying.
Yeah, started in Beijing, worked for them for a year and a half on basically frontline sales. So that meant visiting suppliers and selling trade show booths and selling online subscriptions in Chinese. So it was really on the front line, speaking to suppliers, kind of thrown into the fire or thrown into the deep end, sink or swim on Chinese, which
Wow.
was kind of interesting / embarrassing, very frequently embarrassing. But
Wow.
that led
That's the best
to
way to learn. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's if you can if you have thick skin and you can be kind of embarrassed quite frequently, but still kind of learn from that, it is the best way to learn.
Okay. Yeah, I remember Peter Zaff mentioning you, I think. He was talking about the Xi'an office, and I remember um that's a long time ago. But yeah, 14 that's why it's great to get you on the show. I mean, there's so much we can talk about. Maybe we can get you on even more, but yeah, you mentioned SARS, and of course, we're recording this right during this coronavirus nightmare, or is it a nightmare? I mean, I'm here in Manila. I'm just reading the news. You're there, right? I mean, well, not in Wuhan, but you're in mainland China right now. I don't know. Maybe we just hit this right off the bat, like your experience so far with SARS, being through SARS, and now I guess the word is coronavirus or whatever. I don't know what we call it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's not funny, but my kind of half joking way of thinking about this is I was right in the middle of SARS in Hong Kong when it started. And then I traveled through mainland China when kind of the news wasn't very, they weren't being very transparent. So I was
Mm-hmm.
right in the middle of SARS in Beijing as well. And then I traveled through Southeast Asia when they were getting it. And then I went back to Toronto, where I'm from, when they got it. So,
Wow.
so I was right in the middle of that. And then this year, my wife Michelle, who I think you know, is
Yep.
from Hubei province, and we go back to Hubei every year for
Yep.
Chinese New Year. And we got stuck this year, and now we are stuck here. So we are
Yeah.
right in the middle of this one as well. Um, it's obviously scary, but they're being very transparent, or at least much more transparent this time. And you can talk about it more. So you kind of, I do feel it's very different this time. There's a lot of numbers going around. People are taking it very, very seriously versus last time when, honestly, nobody knew what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if anything, I mean, this time we're like, you just go out onto the street and there's just absolutely nobody outside. And I think you even said in Shenyang where your wife and kids are, it's the
Yeah.
same.
Yeah.
Even
That's what I was just
though,
talking to them.
like, to be honest, there's not a lot of cases there, right? There's as many cases in Shenyang as there is in, let's say, like Los Angeles almost. But
Yeah.
the entire city is shut down. So if anything, this time, I mean, they're taking it very, very seriously.
Yeah. It seems for sure. I guess what some of the news highlights I've heard is, of course, the Chinese economy is bigger than when SARS was in 2003. I mean, and you were there, you were here when it was happening. So, now it's a much bigger deal, much bigger, more money's on the table. I mean, Chinese New Year's over, but it's still going, kind of, right? I mean, I guess this is Chinese New Year still. Like everybody's home longer.
Well,
So like
work work was supposed to start yesterday, and it kind of has, except obviously the whole province of Hubei is shut down, and the rest of the country is kind of three-quarters shut down. So I guess the question is what happens in a couple of weeks from now. But you're right. It's like you take an economy and you cut a month of GDP out of it. I don't know how do you make that work.
I know. Plus, there's already Chinese New Year's already like a few 2 3 weeks anyway, and then you add on. But yeah, I guess let's just move forward. I mean, I think people can read the news, and but yeah, I guess everybody's just locked down. Like my wife is saying, she's just bored with the kids stuck. They're all like they're all just bouncing around in this like 2 bedroom apartment with like aunts and uncles and grandmas and grandpas and kids and stuff. Like it just seems like everybody's just locked down, bored at home. That's kind of what I've heard. So
Yeah, so
um,
I guess we just hope for the best, and there's a lot of people working very hard on this, and you just kind of hope that sooner rather than later things improve.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So let's go into the main part of the interview. So yeah, you've spent quite a bit of time in China, and you did the Chinese cold calling, which is something I just learned from today about you, which is cool. And um, so where did, we're going to talk about your journey into FBA and the brand and building, private labeling and packaging today. And where was the conversation? I think I kind of remember because we've been in touch, but maybe just where did this discussion, or how did it get into this? So the idea to start it.
So into FBA, I guess there's a couple different avenues that it happened. I mean, at Global Sources, so I'd be talking to a lot of suppliers, and I'd also be talking to a lot of buyers, and we'd also see buyer trends at the trade shows and buyer trends online. So it was pretty evident, let's say 2015, 2016, that there was a trend towards B2C, and also that there was more and more buyers who weren't the traditional B2B buyers. They were new online buyers. So I could kind of see that happening. Like you said, Peter. Peter was kind of the leading edge of that for Global Sources at that time. So he started the Global Sources Summit, which is it's been going on, I don't know, 6 or 7 times now,
Yep.
at the trade shows, which is more like a 3-day kind of training event for online sellers, mostly Amazon sellers.
Yep.
So we were getting that kind of exposure. My wife is also, she has quite a bit of contract manufacturing experience. So she was doing, like if you go in the US, there's car dealerships and those kind of companies. When you go in there, you see a lot of branded merchandise. Like you see branded clocks and, premiums, relatively expensive premiums in those dealerships. She was manufacturing some of those. So it's custom one-off manufacturing in the, making, let's say 20 or 30,000 units at a time.
Okay.
So she had a warehouse at that time for that business, and she also had that kind of experience. At the same time, my brother-in-law over in Canada has quite a bit of marketing experience, and obviously also has English as a first language and whatnot. And the two of them kind of put together the idea to start the business, and I obviously encouraged both of them. So basically, what happened is they've been running the business for a couple of years, and they've been growing it. And since I left Global Sources, my job leading the company now is to scale that business. Using corporate experience that I have, with org charts and people and hiring and growing. At Global Sources, at one time in CN, I had something like 1,000 people under me. So, I mean, we're nowhere near that scale, but you never know.
Okay. Yeah, of course, man. You gotta have big goals, big dreams. It's exciting, man. So, so I think some of the advantages, of being where you are, obviously, you learn Chinese, you have Chinese wife, and you have these insights within the industry. So how was the product selection? Was it your wife's industry experience, or was it market research?
Well, actually, it was luck,
Oh, wow. Okay.
or I guess you can call it experience. We have my daughter now is 8 years old, and so I guess back then she was about 4 years old or something. So we were quite frequently buying toys and that kind of stuff for her. And we, in China, so on Taobao or on some of those platforms, and we could see that there was like a value perception gap there. Like we could see that the price of some of this stuff was reasonably low compared to the kind of value that people see in it. So there was a couple ideas there that we got from some of the things my daughter was doing. And that's the direction that they started. So they ended up in toys and games, and that mostly, at least, toys and games. And then they've now built a brand around that. And so that's the direction of the company.
Okay. Ex- I mean, I guess it's luck, but it's also like taking action and being in the right position to do it. So it's it's really great to have this story. um I remember you've joined some of our member calls at Global from Asia. I always appreciate your participation with what we do here. And I remember some of your insights always was there's still, I mean there's still opportunity, right, for private labeling. Even is how are you, maybe talk about the product. Are these products from factories existing? Is there molds? Is there product development? Maybe if you want to share about the process of getting the sourcing. Was it finding what they already had and private labeling it?
Sure. So at the beginning, it was buying stuff that was, let's say 90% existing in the market, and then doing packaging around that. When I say luck, I mean, one thing that was lucky is that in the end, we discovered that this category plays to their strength. So, like I mentioned my wife had a warehouse. So they were able to do final assembly on some of these products. So they could buy materials from a factory, they could buy packaging from another factory, and then they could put it together themselves. So you have a cost advantage over other people. You can also do things faster. You can also do final QC and make sure that everything's fine. So that wasn't the original plan, but that's the way things worked out. And it was really lucky because it is actually quite a big competitive advantage. So now what we do is we've taken that a step further. We have designers. We have designers that work for us full time. We do all the package design. We do a lot of the product design. We have some molds, although not. I mean, we've got a couple kind of plastic injection molds, but nothing really, really huge. But it's mostly design work that we do ourselves, and then all the packaging and branding and all that stuff. But we do have some products where we get raw materials from, let's say, 4 or 5, or components from 4 or 5 different places, and we'll assemble them ourselves.
Okay. Making me think. I'm sure you know Mike Bellamy. He's a pretty nice guy, and I think I learned from him, or at least was the black box. I think what you're saying is kind of, is that black box where you're taking in multiple suppliers' products to your facility, and then repackaging and consolidating. I mean, is that what it would be? I mean, or is
I mean,
it?
it's pretty similar. I mean, the end result is the same. Yes. No supplier sees the entire, generally, no supplier sees the entire situation. No supplier controls all the components. We don't really do it to keep the product secret necessarily. We do it to do QC, and also just to keep, you just keep control of everything. The costs are lower, and also it's easier for you to get things out the door in a specific schedule. It's just easier to do everything, for us if we do it that way.
Got it. And so you still think this is an opportunity to find like maybe existing product? Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there's listeners, quite a few of our listeners still haven't been to China or Asia too often. They're overseas in the West, the US, Europe, other places. I mean, I mean, maybe they're service providers. I don't know. Maybe you offer this start offering this as a service. Some people do, but how hard is this to do if you're not there? Like, I mean, or is it?
Well,
It's
I mean,
probably.
if you say our model, it's impossible. But and that's why I can talk pretty freely about it. To be honest, it's impossible. We try to, basically, our goal is to bridge the gap between um, you know the Western sellers that are overseas. They can do marketing pretty well, and some of them probably do it better than us, but they can't do as well as the Chinese suppliers on sourcing. They can't do as well as the Chinese suppliers maybe on pricing, etc. We've got we can find that middle zone because we have the China team, we have the warehouse in China, we have the team overseas in Canada. So we try to kind of bridge that gap. We try to be the best of both of those worlds. That
Mhm.
is probably not a model that would work for most people who don't have the situation that we have. So what I say to people about, if you ask about overall FBA, is there opportunity? There is, but in my opinion, you have to come into it with a skill set, or you have to come into it with an angle. What's your
Mhm.
angle? If your angle is that you're really good at content development, and you're an online marketer and you can push traffic, like Zach Franklin, who if
Yep.
you come into it with that side, every single outside traffic source. You know how to drive cheap traffic. You're a computer programmer who knows URL structure, and you can figure out ranking on ManyChat and whatnot. That's an angle. If you come at it from an angle like we do, where our expertise is probably mostly on the China side, but we have enough marketing, that's an angle as well. If you come at it with no angle, like you're just taking one of these guru courses, and you just graduated from English major in university yesterday, unless you're really, really good, it's very difficult.
Yeah, I would say the same. I mean, unfortunately, the course gurus won't say that, but I think you and I are, practitioners and making things happen. And I think this is what Amazon wants. I always think of an interview I did with Jerry Gahn a while ago, and he would always talk about, you have two choices as a seller, or I guess any business owner, is to be really good at product or be really good at marketing. Of course, you need both, but I often talk to people about this. I think it's probably more important to be a good product over a good marketer. You can do both, but I mean, you should do both, of course, but usually you have to have stronger on one side or the other. So it seems like you're talking about the stronger product side, right?
Yeah, we came at it definitely stronger from the product side, and we're learning the marketing kind of as we go along. Obviously, I mean, we have a certain amount, but We're not. If you look at some of these like supplement companies or whatnot, they're, light years ahead of where we are.
True. Well, yeah, I mean, that's probably one of the hardest categories, or at least it'd be most skilled marketer, probably to get into supplements. Do you want to share some of the struggles and some of the wins? Maybe we can start with, I don't know if you want a pessimist or an optimist, start with the harder stuff first, or the some of the lessons learned, or things you
So let me
wish you,
start with the wins,
the
or
wins.
the
Okay, I'll
win.
change the order here.
I mean, the main win is that every year since they've started, or since and also since I've kind of joined, the revenue's been going up and the profit's been going up. So the overall trajectory of the business has been positive since they started. Revenue, profit, number of products, number of marketplaces, number of employees, everything is growing quite nicely. So from an overall perspective, the wins have been, that win is kind of what you're looking for.
Definitely.
Um, I think that what most people have probably learned from though is the downs, or the tough parts. So let me let me jump into a couple, I guess, stories slash lessons.
Sure, this is the good stuff.
I mean, the first thing that happened to them way back when they started, I think it was 2016. So they were just sending in their first shipment. They sent it in. It was supposed to be sent by air, and it took 30 days to get there. So we think what happened was that the freight forwarder actually sent it by fast sea and not by air. So normally you'd say, okay, well, no big deal, wait an extra 20 days. But the problem was that was exactly when they cut off the sales for Q4. So because their product didn't get in there fast enough, they were cut off for 3 months. So the first 3 months, they basically couldn't sell. And I guess
Unbelievable.
the story is a little bit complicated, but it was even worse because they got a first small shipment in. So that first shipment that they actually, that they sent, they were allowed to sell, but they weren't allowed to send any more in, I think is what it was. And that first shipment sold like firecrackers, just like right off the bat, just gone. So what happened was they sent in, I don't know what it was, but maybe they got like $20,000 in sales, and in like a week or 10 days, but they couldn't replenish. And everyone had seen that they'd gotten the sale. So you can imagine what happened.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they had to wait 2.5 months before they could send in any replacement. So just sitting there waiting, kind of, horrified by the situation, waiting for the competitors to flood into that market. So I haven't heard very many people with a worse starting story than that.
That is a rough one. But I mean, I guess that's what starting. I mean, of course, that's a hard one. But most people starting have a bad experience or a bad story. I think that's the point of starting. That's part of the process, right? I mean, I guess it's part of the learning process, and maybe the fraternity hazing from college days, or just to make sure you're serious to do this. Um, for
Yeah,
sure.
and it ended up working out fine. The product actually still survived. They were the market leader for a year and a half or 2 years after that. So it ended up working out fine. But you can imagine the anxiety of those kind of 2 months.
I could definitely. I mean,
So
I've had some
that's
scary stories too, for sure. So,
Yeah, that's one. There's been, we've expanded into Europe. That's been successful, but also very, there's been a bunch of problems there. Got the entire account suspended for a customs inspection. Nothing was wrong. They did nothing wrong, but just pulled down for a week. So in Europe, if you get pulled down in one tiny little country, they pull all your accounts in the EU down.
jeez,
So they've been suspended there, which was, I think, 8 or 9 days for really no good reason. VAT, we've been fined €6,000 for problems that we couldn't really, it's kind of Amazon problems. So there's all sorts of, little stuff that happens. We've had to dispose of, I think somewhere around $20,000 worth of product for various reasons.
Yeah.
So lots of little stuff. But
Yeah, it's
like I
very
said, the
stressful.
overall trajectory is pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's what separates the men from the boys or the girls from the women. Those scary times where you're writing off inventory, you're delayed on imports, you're out of stock, you're maybe some recalls, some listings, suspensions. I mean, this is just the scary stuff you hear, but well,
The last time I saw you, I think, was during the Cross Border Summit. That
yeah,
time we were kind of freaking out because we had a very seasonal product that we had around 250,000 dollars US in inventory, and it wasn't moving like we had predicted.
yeah, this is scary. I think I remember you maybe chatting to me, or you chatted a couple of us about that. But I think, like you said, the overall trajectory. I mean, here I think I'm part of Alpha Rock here, and there's always some nightmare because we have quite a few different brands and things. So there's always some emergency. I think that's just part of e-commerce or retail, maybe, right? Retail, you're taking the risk from the factory, all the way to the consumer. So there's all that supply chain risk, right? But of course, you have the higher reward of the margins, the direct, so, but you of course got to deal with all these little risks and nightmares along the way from that factory to that end consumer. And you just gotta hopefully, yeah, like you said, just gotta make sure that you're earning more than you're losing. And yeah, it's business, right? And as long as the overall net is up, you're doing better. But of course, I think every seller goes through those scary times for sure. I don't think anybody would say they haven't. And I hope you're still with me. You there,
Yeah,
Cameron? Okay. Just hoping to get a connection. So let's talk about it. Talk about from factory. So you have your own kind of like little, I call it black box, or your little consolidation packaging area. Maybe you can share. Do you guys go and have your relationships with your factories, drinking Baijiu and gifts and guanxi and terms? Is there anything, are you doing a 30/70, 50/50? Are are you doing, or maybe you're actually doing VAT? Are you doing X works with RMB and then you're doing exporting? And I don't know if you want to talk about some of the kind of.
actually,
Okay, so I guess I keep it real on this show, but we had a little technical difficulty, but we're reconnecting now, Cameron, and let's just start from that last question. Um, I think just some insights on the relationships with the factories. I know you have the advantage of your own like consolidation packaging kind of center, but also, is there any other advantages or deals you have with these suppliers?
yeah, I mean, we have the advantage of having the packing facility warehouse, but we also have the advantage of having a local Chinese team, which means that all our sourcing is done locally. All our pricing is usually done in X works,
Yeah,
in renminbi as well.
yeah.
So, and then we do things a little bit differently than kind of what's generally taught because of the way that we're set up. So we have the ability, and we have hands-on all our materials before we send them out of our warehouse. So we have the ability to basically QC every single piece that comes that comes to us. So
Yeah,
generally, what that leads to is we don't do things like factory, and we don't do pre-shipment inspections like everyone kind of recommends. The reason is because we inspect everything by hand when we're assembling it, and
true.
anything that's bad, we just directly send back.
Yeah,
So, I mean, that allows us to have relatively simple contracts with our manufacturers. We don't generally do kind of the 50-page purchase orders with 100 different conditions and all that kind of stuff. We work on relationships basically, and we keep a very close eye on the orders. So we don't just wait until the order is ready to ship to ask kind of how it's going. We check very frequently on the progress. And then we inspect everything, and whatever's no good, we just send it straight back. So it's a little bit of a different system than what most people are used to, but it's worked quite well for us. We didn't quite start that way. We started with, what generally is recommended, which is very rigorous contracts and whatnot. But this has worked quite well for us for the system that we have set up. It allows us to kind of, rely on the relationship with the manufacturer well. Um, and, we try to find factories that have bosses that have the same kind of mindset as us. It's, we're partners, we'll help you, you'll help us. And, we give a little, we take a little. We're very actually rigorous on quality. We don't accept anything that's even, borderline. And they know that. But at the same time, we will give a little on timing. Sometimes, like, especially now with what's happening in China, we're obviously understanding of that situation. We sometimes will give a little on price if we understand the reasons behind some of the price increases and stuff. If a supplier tells us before Chinese New Year that they want us to pay a little bit more than we normally would in advance, sometimes we do that. But then we'll also, when we need the orders quickly in July and August for Q4, we'll push them super hard. Or if we need to extend terms even beyond what we've agreed with them, when we need that, we'll push them very hard.
Got it. Yeah, this is great insights. So I'll just kind of like reiterate or maybe say it in maybe like a flow. So X works. I think most listeners are familiar. Most people. So that's just the most two common are X works or FOB. Of course, there's other Inco terms it's called, but basically X works is not as common as FOB. Most people like in the U.S. or overseas are getting an FOB Ningbo, FOB maybe Guangzhou, FOB Shenzhen quotation right from the supplier, and that means that it's sent directly to the port of that port with the export duty taken care of. Or actually, there's a rebate, which I can probably, I don't know if you're ready to answer that, but I'll simplify, I'll just kind of reiterate. So then you're doing X works, which means you pay in local RMB currency, local bank transfer, and then it's shipped by probably truck to your facility, and then you don't have any, maybe you go to the factory. I'm wondering if you're doing on-site, you're saying you're following the production. But you have anybody there go there, or you're following just by like having somebody in your team chatting to them while production's happening or getting photos, or do you actually have people going to the production on your team
It's
or in your?
mostly it's mostly WeChat. I mean, I've been to a lot of these factories, and my team's been to a lot of these factories, but we don't check on an order by order,
Got it.
order by order basis. It's mostly WeChat. Like, we have groups with all of our suppliers,
Yep.
and we chat back and forth. And if there's any doubt on some of the stuff they're saying, we'll ask for pictures or videos
Got it.
or that kind of stuff.
Cool. And then, so just let me finish. I guess let me just go through this flow. So then they finish production. You don't have anybody, like you said, a lot of people, actually, I usually do recommend, I just spoke here in Manila actually for a meetup, and I said, always pay for the pre-shipping inspection. But it definitely, if you don't have your kind of setup, of course, they're kind of going crazy if they don't even do any pre-shipping inspection. But that's normally when we send like a third-party QC company or maybe somebody in your team to go to the factory, and usually it's not 100% check. They're doing like a small percentage. I actually don't know what's the percentage, 5-10% spot check usually, right? I mean, they usually don't do 100% inspection, and then they're just making sure that quality acceptance rate, statistics that they're willing to accept, is passed or failed. And then if it's failed, they have to kind of like maybe recheck all the products. So that's usually how it goes. But yeah, your situation is you don't have anybody have to go there. You've maybe been there for relationship building or early stage factory development. But once you're reordering or ordering, you just get it received. Because it's received in China, you can just take it and check it. And actually, we had that with the Sisitano case study where we had the EWU market pick up and it was bad quality. We didn't like it. We sent it back. We got our money back. I think if anybody's able to, I think China is willing to take back returns before it leaves China, right? So I think for a lot of the probably listeners and foreigners, they don't notice the problem until it's in Amazon or at least in the US warehouse. And then that by that time you're kind of dead because the cost to ship it back is more than usually the cost of the product. So I'm just trying to reiterate what you had said in a more of a different angle, but so most listeners are doing that, but I still think you got to do if you got to do the pre-inspection, QC inspection if you're not using what you have, because there's some buyers you probably know that just wing it and hope that it's good quality and wait until it's in Amazon, which is freaking Russian roulette. But
Yeah, that's for sure. Most buyers can't do it the way we do it. By no means am I suggesting those kind of buyers don't do pre-shipment inspection.
yeah,
It's
and not
necessary.
necessarily. But yeah, of course they have to
Um,
do that.
but
But I
you're
mean,
right. The domestic shipping in China is cheap, number one, and as long as it doesn't leave the borders, you can ship it back pretty easily. Once
yeah.
once stuff leaves China, re-importing it is a total
Yeah.
nightmare.
Yeah, so then usually that's where you get in trouble with the supplier. You're like, hey, 20% of this was bad. I'm getting of course, but that's not even about the money at that point when you're getting negative feedback on your Amazon listing or returns, or listing problems. That's the nightmare. That's not even about the money of the product. That's like your business livelihood at that time. But so yeah, I mean, you have the advantage and you're doing 100% because you're also checking everything as you package it and maybe assemble it or combine it with other products from other factories. So that's really insightful. And I know other foreigners in China that do that, and we've been able to do that. And there are service providers I think that do exist. People could use. Of course, they'd have pay for that service, but there are options I think for people not in China. But of course, being there, um, like in your setup is probably the ultimate. I
I guess the
brought
one other point that I would make that I hear
sure.
actually I hear a lot of people commenting on this that I kind of disagree with most people's opinions. When you hear you go on Facebook or you hear podcasts and stuff, you hear a lot of people talking about cultural, how you negotiate with Chinese people, how the culture works, how that you have to know all sorts of cultural aspects, what to do, what not to do in China. I've been here a long time. My feeling is generally that in general, people are people, and as in any negotiation with a Chinese supplier, it's really quite easy. It's information is your friend. So if you go into a negotiation having no idea what the cost of a product is, regardless of where you do that negotiation, you're probably going to get fleeced.
Mm-hmm.
But if you go in with 5 different quotations from 5 different suppliers, you have an idea of the raw material cost. You have an idea of the cost of the box. You have an idea of the cost of labor. If you go in with that kind of information, you can basically back out the supplier's profit, and you can basically parrot that back to them, tell them that you're not some schlub that doesn't know what they're talking about, and get to a fair price for both of you. That's
Mm-hmm.
the way we do it. That's the way I kind of approach these things, and I think that in a lot of cases people really overthink it. Get information. You don't really have to spend a ton of time on cultural stuff.
Yeah.
Chinese people in general are highly pragmatic, especially
Yeah.
business people. They want your money. They want to do business with you. They don't
True.
really care if as long as you don't insult China, they don't really care what you do.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe you don't agree with. I usually tell people bring a small little home gift, like St. Louis. Somebody came once. I said bring some like hot sauce, some small little fun stuff from your hometown is kind of like my little tip I usually add in my talks. But yeah, I
Oh, I
mean,
agree with that. But wouldn't you do that, and regardless of where you went,
yeah, it's kind of
like
true.
it's a
I guess
nice
it
it's a
doesn't
nice
matter.
thing to do anywhere, right?
Yeah, I guess that's true anywhere. True, true. But yeah, it's awesome, Cameron. Thanks. I mean, this is great. This has been really gold. I guess one of my last parts in the supply chain is VAT, Fa Piao crap or the X works to SOB. And that's always a really complex topic. But I guess you're doing that internally, or you have a partner company or a local company that can help with the whole export process because you're doing EXW and RMB. And then do you get the tax benefit or the rebate? benefit?
No, we haven't quite figured out the rebate yet because I mean, there's a whole bunch of business
Yeah,
structures that
exactly. It's,
you have to have in place in order to get it done. And for us, the value is not like it's sitting there as one of the to-do list items for
yeah,
some year
yeah,
when we figure it out.
yeah, exactly. So like, I guess it's such a complicated topic. I think we actually had a little bit on some older podcasts, but basically, you're actually so you're actually paying a little bit more with XWorks than our FOB, which is also counterintuitive. But the price, right, is higher RMB because it has the FOP with FAPIAO, right? So if you actually probably ask them for FOB, they probably give you a lower price, right? Because that's how I've noticed it with our products is, but then like you said, it's not just about the unit cost, it's about the control. But I think usually the price is higher if it's not FOB because they get that tax rebate. All right, try 3 here. These we work hard here at Gold from Asia with these cross-border interviews and internets. This was but anyway, let's continue. We're getting towards the end, and this has been a great show. Thanks so much, Cameron, for sharing. So we were just kind of talking about the whole FAPIAO, EXW, FOB pricing, and so it seems like you haven't really applied for that, but you're saying it's still worth it, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a couple percent net of your export value, like 3 or 4% or something like that, generally. So it's worth. I mean, it's worth going for if you have the structure that can handle it. We aren't quite there yet, but hopefully we will do it. This year or next year maybe.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so that's pretty advanced anyways for most listeners. So I guess let's go to that. Like one of my final questions is that poor listener, like I don't want to use names, but I've talked to some of them. You met some of them. Like they're back home in America, Europe, trying their best to build their Amazon business and control their supply chain. I mean, I don't know. I mean, this is probably overwhelming to them. And what would you say to somebody listening today to try to improve their supply chain?
Well, I mean, it's not easy for sure with the time change and whatnot, but I think everyone should be talking to their suppliers on WeChat. And I'd say just don't expect things to go perfectly all the time. So you have to be on it. You really, I mean, if there's an employee doing it for you, you got to make sure that they're on it. But the key is just to really follow up very, very frequently. And the key is, despite what I said, our situation is good pre-shipment inspections with good standards for the quality inspection company to understand kind of what what you want. Never let bad product get out of China, if at all possible, because it's a total nightmare if it does. And just, assume that it's going to take a significant amount of your time to get it right.
Yeah, I think that's great, amazing advice. E-commerce. I tell people it's the merge of internet and electronic and traditional commerce, and especially with this whole you're really kind of factory to consumer F2C. You got to deal with all that headache. That used to be 4 or 5 companies back in the traditional. So now by going direct, you as the seller or the almost factory directly to consumer have to deal with all those headaches. So it's just part of the game if you want to make that extra margin and grow in today's kind of new evolving e-commerce world. I think you're going to have to invest in stepping up your game and improving. It's just like anything in life or business, if you're not improving and increasing your business reach, you're probably dying or at least stagnating. So thanks so much again, Cameron. Is there ways people could connect with you? Of course, you're really active in our community and others. I don't know if you have websites. I know you might not have anything really to sell or promote, but what's some ways people can find you? Or
yeah, I don't have anything to promote, but on WeChat, I think I'm Cam Walker. On Facebook, I think you can find me under Cameron Walker. Should be pretty easy. So those are probably the best 2 ways.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Cameron. Really appreciate you sharing today. It was although it was a little struggle for me and you recording it, I'm sure this will be one of our more popular shows. It's amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. We got through it.
You made it happen. Some people thought I was crazy taking Cross-Border Summit out of China, but somehow maybe we made a good move. I've been talking to some great people, getting them to come out to Cross Border Summit 5th Annual, November 19th and 20th, 2020. We've been doing 5 of these, 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, and this is 2020. First time out of mainland China, down in Southeast Asia in Chiang Mai, Thailand. I'll be back there with my wife and kids. I'll try to bring them to the event. I think they're old enough, maybe they can speak. If you enjoy what you are listening to and you want to meet amazing guests on the show, listeners, other experts in the community, it's an action-packed 2-day plus some pre-event action if you want and some post-event action. It's getting bigger and better, and we're working on this even harder and even more in advance. crossbordersummit.com/Thailand. Get on the waiting list. Thanks, Cameron. I really appreciate it. It's a crazy time right now, and we didn't talk too much about this coronavirus. I know it's on everybody's mind. Let's just hope it cools off a little bit. I just literally took my mask off when I got back to my apartment here in Manila, Philippines, but I do feel like it's calming down a little bit, and maybe it's just I'm getting used to it. But also, I was on BBC Radio in the UK. They like my vlog. Those of you who want to check out my videos on mikesblog.com/vlog or find me on social media. But a reporter there really liked my story of how I feel guilty as a dad in Manila while my wife and kids are stuck in their apartment in North China. So had a little 3-minute clip in the BBC Live Radio earlier last week when the show goes online, February 2020. But I think most sellers I hear from, and Cameron too, I think, Cameron's been through SARS. I can't say I've been in China that long, but I think these things this will pass by. It's weeds out the weak, right? The strong will survive. Hopefully you have enough inventory. That's something. So we were going to do a webinar, and we were going to do with David Nicolucci, and we're just afraid to do too much about sales promotions when most people maybe are increasing price or defending against running out of stock, so they're scared to do promotions right now. It's a crazy world, and I hope everybody stays safe. It seems like the tariffs, the trade war is kind of going by. They're maybe this coronavirus helped make the deal better, but taxes and tariffs seem to be lowered on both sides lately. I don't have quotes, but I've been seeing screenshots in various social media, and I'm sure this will develop. I'm sorry, I'm just so exhausted, seriously. But we're just grinding here, and I think that's what separates the winners from the losers. You got to get through these tough times. And man, I had a good call with a friend Marcus, and investor, and he was saying it's just been brutal the last couple of years. Trade wars, Hong Kong protests, and now coronavirus is like, what is next? I even had a little mini volcano issue here in Manila. I mean, it's just making a stronger business. But when I was talking to BBC, I'm like, yeah, so who would the reporter, well, it wasn't on the interview, but in the prepping, she's like, are you thinking about going back to America? I'm like, man, I didn't think so. But with all this crap now, it's like one after another challenge. But just like Cameron said in the interview, you have to kind of go through the school of hard knocks, get some bad quality, get some delays, shipments, get some stuck in customs. I mean, there's that saying, I don't know, maybe my dad always reminded me, if it was easy, everybody would do it. If you want to do something easy, there's definitely easy routes. But if you're listening here and taking action, I hope you're taking action, not just enjoying the show, but getting in the battlefield, getting in the arena. E-commerce gladiator. I actually just got a good friend that wrote me a great email. They enjoyed the book E-commerce Gladiator. Just a little plug for my 4th book. But I am gonna wrap it up. I am burned out. I'm gonna get my teeth cleaned. Seriously, I didn't want to do it in China, and I've been trying to find a dentist in Manila. They rescheduled because of the coronavirus. It's just everywhere, man. Like, the battle does not end just to get my teeth cleaned, I think I have a pretty bad cavity because it hurts when I eat. So hopefully they don't drill too deep. But no matter what, we're going to live another day, right? Every day above ground is a good one. Every day you should be making at least a little bit of progress. Try to build that relationship with your supplier. Try to get a little bit of marketing strategies, learning something new, meeting a new contact, making a new relationship, appreciating an old relationship. I try to do that once a day. But I'm burned out, and I'm going to... Oh, man, the headset's falling off. Okay, it's something that's telling me I got to stop. Thank you for listening. Thank you, Cameron, for sharing. We got some amazing guests on this show, and there's so many more lined up. I mean, we got them recorded already, and people emailing us all the time to come on the show, and there's just so much to talk about. So thank you, and see you next week, Tuesdays, 10 a.m. Hong Kong time. Bye-bye.
To get more info about running an international business, please visit our website at www.globalfromasia.com. That's www.globalfromasia.com. Also, be sure to subscribe to our iTunes feed. Thanks for tuning in.